How good is your history knowledge? Test yourself with this 40-question quiz and see how many you can get right. Stay until the end and comment your score to challenge others. Ready? Let's begin. Who was the leader of the Macedonian Empire and conquered much of the known world? Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, or Napoleon Bonaparte? Alexander the Great. Did you know Alexander the Great's empire stretched from Greece to Egypt and as far as India? Who was the first emperor of China? Qin Shi Huang, Lu Bang, or Sun Tzu? Qin Shi Huang. Did you know Qin Shi Huang unified China in 221 BC and became the first emperor of the Qin dynasty? Who led the Roman army during the Battle of Alesia? Julius Caesar, Augustus, or Marcus Aurelius? Julius Caesar. Did you know Julius Caesar's victory at the Battle of Alesia in 52 BC marked the end of the Gallic Wars? Who was the British Prime Minister during World War II? Winston Churchill, Neville Chamberlain, or Margaret Thatcher? Winston Churchill. Did you know Winston Churchill was known for his defiance and leadership during the darkest days of World War II? Who was the leader of the Soviet Union during the Cold War? Joseph Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev, or Mikhail Gorbachev? Joseph Stalin. Did you know Joseph Stalin ruled the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953? Who was the first president of the United States? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln? George Washington. Did you know George Washington became the first president of the United States in 1789 and led the country during its early years? Who was the famous ruler of the Mongol Empire? Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, or Attila the Hun? Genghis Khan. Did you know Genghis Khan expanded the Mongol Empire, making it the largest contiguous empire in history? Who was the leader of the French Revolution and the French Republic? Napoleon Bonaparte, Maximilien Robespierre, or Louis XVI? Maximilien Robespierre. Did you know Robespierre played a key role in the Reign of Terror during the French Revolution? Who was the famous Egyptian pharaoh known for his extensive building projects and the construction of the Great Pyramid? Ramses II, Tutankhamun, or Khufu? Khufu. Did you know Khufu, also known as Cheops, commissioned the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza? Who was the famous military leader who became the Emperor of France after the French Revolution? Napoleon Bonaparte, Charles de Gaulle, or Louis XIV? Napoleon Bonaparte. Did you know Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power after the French Revolution and was crowned emperor in 1804? Who was the founder of the Maurya Empire in India? Ashoka, Chandragupta Maurya, or Akbar? Chandragupta Maurya. Did you know Chandragupta Maurya founded the Maurya Empire in 322 BC and expanded it across the Indian subcontinent? Who was the famous conqueror and emperor of the Inca Empire? Pachacuti, Atahualpa, or Manco Capac? Pachacuti. Did you know Pachacuti is credited with transforming the Inca Empire into the largest and most advanced civilization in pre-Columbian America? Who was the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Margaret Thatcher, Theresa May, or Queen Elizabeth II? Margaret Thatcher. Did you know? Margaret Thatcher served as Prime Minister from 1979 to 1990 and was the longest-serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century. Who was the leader of the American Civil Rights Movement? Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, or Rosa Parks? Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know? Martin Luther King Jr. was instrumental in advancing civil rights through nonviolent protests, including the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Who was the longest-reigning British monarch before Queen Elizabeth II? Queen Victoria, King George III, or King Henry VIII? Queen Victoria. Did you know? Queen Victoria reigned for 63 years and 216 days from 1837 to 1901, a period known as the Victorian era. Who was the first emperor of the Roman Empire? Augustus, Julius Caesar, or Nero? Augustus. Did you know? Augustus was the first emperor of Rome and transformed the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. Who was the leader of the Zulu kingdom during its conflicts with the British? Shaka Zulu, Cetshwayo, or Dingaan? Shaka Zulu. Did you know? Shaka Zulu is credited with uniting the Zulu people and revolutionizing warfare tactics in southern Africa. Who led the American forces during the American Revolution? George Washington, Thomas Paine, or Benjamin Franklin? George Washington. Did you know? George Washington led the Continental Army to victory against Great Britain and later became the first president of the United States. Who was the first female ruler of England? Queen Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria, or Mary I? Queen Elizabeth I. Did you know? Queen Elizabeth I ruled from 1558 until her death in 1603, a period known as the Elizabethan era. Who was the last Tsar of Russia? Nicholas II, Alexander II, or Ivan the Terrible? Nicholas II. Did you know? Nicholas II was the last Russian emperor and was executed along with his family during the Russian Revolution in 1918. Who was the leader of the Cuban Revolution in 1959? Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, or Hugo Chavez? Fidel Castro. Did you know? Fidel Castro led Cuba's revolution and was the country's prime minister and president for nearly 5 decades. Who was the first king of the unified kingdom of Israel? Saul, David, or Solomon? Saul. Did you know? King Saul was the first monarch of the Israelites, uniting the 12 tribes into a single kingdom. Who was the famous queen of ancient Egypt known for her political acumen and romantic alliances? Cleopatra, Nefertiti, or Hatshepsut? Cleopatra. Did you know? Cleopatra VII was known for her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, which helped her maintain power in Egypt. Who was the founder of the Ottoman Empire? Osman I, Suleiman the Magnificent, or Mehmed II? Osman I. Did you know? Osman I founded the Ottoman Empire in 1299, which would last for over 600 years. Who was the leader of the Indian independence movement against British rule? Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, or Subhas Chandra Bose? Mahatma Gandhi. Did you know Mahatma Gandhi led India to independence through non-violent civil disobedience? Who was the leader of Nazi Germany during World War II? Adolf Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, or Joseph Goebbels? Adolf Hitler. Did you know Adolf Hitler led the Nazi Party and initiated World War II, as well as the Holocaust? Who was the famous leader of the African National Congress who fought against apartheid in South Africa? Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, or Oliver Tambo? Nelson Mandela. Did you know Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison before becoming South Africa's first black president and ending apartheid? Who was the first president of South Africa after the end of apartheid? Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, or Jacob Zuma? Nelson Mandela. Did you know Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa in 1994, after the country's first fully democratic elections? Who was the famous military leader of the Carthaginian Empire during the Second Punic War? Hannibal, Scipio Africanus, or Marius? Hannibal. Did you know Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa in 1994, after the country's first fully democratic elections? Who was the leader of the Vikings during their raids on England and France? Ragnar Lothbrok, Harold Hardrada, or Ivar the Boneless? Ragnar Lothbrok. Did you know Ragnar Lothbrok is a legendary Viking leader whose raids significantly impacted the British Isles and France? Who was the first emperor of Rome after Julius Caesar's assassination? Augustus, Tiberius, or Caligula? Augustus. Did you know Augustus, also known as Octavian, was the adopted heir of Julius Caesar and became Rome's first emperor? Who was the leader of the American Revolution and the first president of the United States? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or James Madison? George Washington. Did you know George Washington was a central figure in the American Revolution and became the first president of the United States? Who was the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution and the founder of the Soviet Union? Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, or Joseph Stalin? Vladimir Lenin. Did you know Lenin led the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, which resulted in the overthrow of the Russian monarchy and the establishment of the Soviet Union? Who was the leader of the Indian independence movement and the founder of Pakistan? Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Jawaharlal Nehru, or Subhas Chandra Bose? Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Did you know Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the founder of Pakistan and the driving force behind the partition of British India? Who led the English forces during the Battle of Agincourt in 1415? Henry V, Richard the Lionheart, or Edward III? Henry V. Did you know Henry V's victory at the Battle of Agincourt is considered one of the most significant English military victories? Who was the famous Queen of England known for her leadership during the Spanish Armada? Elizabeth I Victoria, or Mary I? Elizabeth I. Did you know Queen Elizabeth I's defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 marked a key moment in English history and the decline of Spanish influence? Who was the leader of the Zulu kingdom during the Anglo-Zulu War in 1879? Shaka Zulu, Sechweo, or Dingane? Sechweo. Did you know Sechweo led the Zulu kingdom against British forces in the Anglo-Zulu War and famously won the Battle of Isandlwana? Who Who was the famous emperor of the Byzantine Empire known for his code of laws? Justinian I, Constantine I, or Theodosius I? Justinian I. Did you know Justinian I's legal reforms, known as the Justinian Code, were one of the foundations of modern Western law? Who was the first leader of the German Nazi Party? Adolf Hitler, Heinrich Himmler, or Joseph Goebbels? Adolf Hitler. Did you know Adolf Hitler led the Nazi Party and rose to power as Chancellor of Germany in 1933, leading to World War II and the Holocaust? Who was the famous leader of the American Civil Rights Movement and advocate for nonviolent protest? Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, or Rosa Parks? Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know Martin Luther King Jr. led the civil rights movement and is famous for his "I Have a Dream" speech and his nonviolent approach to protest? Thank you. See you next time. Goodbye.